John Fetterman. All right, Senator, are some Democrats rooting for Iran?
Well, whether I wouldn't say rooting, but they if they have any words to say, it's against America, and it's describing us, if anything, as if we're the aggressor, or we are on the wrong side of history, and that's just not true. I mean, every single president since Iran was the regime was created in 79, every single president wanted to address it, and they wanted to fix that, and they want to hold them accountable what they've done. And now all these things have tried negotiating treaties, all other kinds of sanctions and all that did not work. And now it was at the point after they created the kinds of funding of 10-7, and they continued to underwrite the world's most amount of terrorism. So Trump did something about it. And now, as a Democrat, I think we should all agree, hey, I think it's a good thing that Iran has been held accountable. And I'm going to be the only Democrat that's going to continue to support those efforts, because I can't imagine why we can't agree that it's a good thing. And now there are more things that are necessary at this point to achieve that. And I'm going to be the one Democrat that votes against the War Powers Act that if it comes up next week.
Okay. So I woke up pissed. I'm just going to tell you, look, if you guys know me, you know, I'm a 22 Army combat veteran. I'm the son of an World War II Marine veteran. I'm the grandson of a World War I Army Air Corpsman. My son was in the 82nd Airborne. My son-in-law deployed to Iraq behind me. My family has given and given and given to the United States with our minds and our bodies and our families to serve this nation. And to see John Fetterman, a Democrat, go on TV, go on Fox News, which apparently is his actual side gig now. Instead of representing the people of Pennsylvania, Mr. Fetterman's side gig is to be a Fox News host to smear his own party. But to see John Fetterman go on there and call those of us who question our own government's reasoning for going to war as essentially un-American, to see one of our fellow Democrats, but to see anyone questioning my patriotism because I'm questioning the reasoning behind going to war, the failure to get congressional approval, all the things that are normal in this country when we go to war, when we send our sons and daughters, our mothers and fathers, our husbands and wives to go to war, where we've lost at least 13. To question that makes me unpatriotic, makes me un-American. I'm not taking it. I'm not going to take it for privilege. And I'm damn sure not going to take it from a Democrat who pretends to be a populist man of the people with his bullshit hoodies, telling me that me, a veteran of the United States Army who's given his body and soul to this nation, that somehow I don't support America because I'm questioning Donald Trump getting our fucking kids killed in war. I'm not taking it. I ain't taking it. And you shouldn't either. And then the end of that thing, the last part I want you to talk about, folks, I'm going to be the only Democrat not voting against authorization for war. Listen to me. Even George Bush went to Congress and asked for permission after 9/11. He asked for permission again to invade Iraq. George H.W. Bush's father made the case to defend Saudi Arabia and then take back Kuwait from Iraq. It's called an authorization for the use of military force. It's the simplest thing. And now they're talking about asking us for $200 billion to pay for their war. And this son of a bitch won't even vote on that. It's not like it's outrageous, folks. They have not only they've not voted on the authorization of military force, they haven't held a single public hearing justifying this entire thing. And we've got a Democratic senator going on TV saying that's okay. Are you freaking kidding me with this stuff? Are you kidding me? It's enough is enough. But it goes to a larger issue that I address a lot when I go out and talk to people around my area these days. It goes to the issue of the disrespect for us as Americans, the disrespect for us as voters, the disrespect for us as citizens of the United States. And this is yet another example that was, of course, the former deputy of the FBI.
What bothers me about it is it's clearly calculated because the Democrats have lost the middle class. There are only two groups of people who are Democrats now, only two. There's these super rich Karens who they can be whatever they want because it doesn't really matter, so they can live in the world of ideas. And there's unfortunately really poor folks who've been given money by the Democrats, taking money from the super rich to pay them off. They've lost the middle class completely. So they think if they go out and do the Ruben Gallego and drop a few F-bombs inauthentically, that all of a sudden a bunch of working class coal miners from West Virginia are going to, clamor to vote Democrat again. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's a really poor strategy.
Yeah, nice try, buddy. Yeah, that ain't the issue. You already said, pull that thread. That Democrats are just poor people getting money from the super rich. Did you know that right now, 50% of all consumer spending in the United States of America is from the top 10%? Yeah, that's right. The rich have gotten richer. The big billionaire bill was the largest transfer of wealth from the lower class and the middle class to the upper class in world history, in American history. And the audacity of these guys to go on TV and say who they think we are, okay? And they're not. And especially the young people today, because I talked to a lot of young people. And this is what just came out this morning, folks, as we got ready for this show. Look at this number. Inflation rose 3.3% in March. I was at a town hall with some students at University of Missouri just this week on Wednesday. I was in Columbia, Missouri, talking with some young Americans. You know what they're worried about? The future. They're worried about the fact that with the economy going like that, 3.3%, the largest gap between median income and median house price in the history, 50 years at least. They're worried about the future because the middle class dream, the American dream they were promised, has all but disappeared. It's gone. While the rich got richer, while people like Dan Bongino go on TV and say, well, you're a Democrat, you think you just drop an F-bomb. No, folks. It's working Americans who are sick and tired of being ignored or being smeared or being put down like we're stupid. Working Americans have been forgotten by everyone. And what's sick is it's even people like John Fetterman who think we're unpatriotic because we don't want our kids to get killed in a war that we didn't sign up for. Again and again, they do this. If you remember during the arguments for the big billionaire bill, remember what the argument was? That one of the things they said a lot, that I talk about a lot, is there's this mythical 27-year-old men who didn't have jobs and were laying around on couches getting free healthcare while playing video games. That's why they had to cut Medicaid. So we made sure those dead weights didn't get Medicaid. I've never met those people because free healthcare doesn't pay the bills. I do know my own son, who at the time was a 27-year-old bartender at that time. And when he signed up for the ACA, he qualified for Medicaid. He wasn't lazy. He was working his ass off. Well, I do know the wife of the owner of a brewery here in Missouri, who I spoke to, whose husband gets his health care through the VA, but she gets it through Medicaid. They're not lazy. And so again and again, what we see is people in politics ignoring who they're supposed to represent. And that takes me to our topic of today's show. I'm really excited. We've got a great guest coming on here shortly who runs a thing called the Civics Center. And they're very focused on, frankly, high school students and how they get involved. Because I talk to a lot of high school students right now, and they're angry and they're scared and they're worried and anxious about their futures. And we need to empower them and show them that there's a better way, but we need them to get involved. So I'm really excited to have this show. As you know, I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Amongst FP Wellman every Friday right here live on the Midas Touch Network. I'm thrilled to have you. We've got a great show, got a great guest as always. So let's get on with the show. Welcome. I don't know if that intro worked or not, but whatever. We're live. Anyway, great to see you. As I mentioned before the break, I am Fred Wellman. I woke up angry. I think I did a lot lately, don't I? So that's the deal, right? So, but that's energy, folks. That's the energy we need. That's the energy of we had, I think, 9,000 people out in my area down the street here for No King's Day. That's the energy I'm seeing when I talk to young people and older people. It's funny. I was talking to my daughter about that student town hall I attended at Mizzou. And she said, it must be fun being around energized voters like young people. I said, here's the funny thing to tell you is everybody I'm around is energized right now. People in their 80s. There was a gentleman at that town hall that was 80 years old. And let me tell you, he was energized too. So people are fired up right now. But I want to talk about young people. I want to talk about high school students. You know, here in Missouri, you could register to vote when you're 17, for as long as you're going to be 18 by the time of the election. And a lot of our politicians and elected and campaign professors ask, well, how do I get involved? And as always, the perfect guest joins me. The perfect guest falls in my lap. It's Laura Brill. Laura Brill is the CEO. She's a very accomplished lawyer in Los Angeles. She's also the founder of the Civics Center. So let's welcome Laura to the show. Laura, it's great to have you.
Great. It's so nice to be with you, Fred. Thanks for having me.
I want to read your whole bio, but my goodness, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I mean, you've been in the fight for a long time, haven't you, Laura?
I've been working both doing pro bono legal work and then now starting the Civics Center about 10 years ago almost, and really focusing on voting rights and young people, and not just rights in the abstract, but getting young people involved in democracy.
And that's the thing. And we've got a whole new generation who's coming in. As I mentioned, you saw the intro. You know, there's a lot of frustration. They're facing a world that's very, very different. I mean, this generation grew up through the pandemic. This generation has grown up. Now they've got facing yet another unforced war, on and on. And what do you, as you speak to the young people, what are you seeing as we approach the midterms amongst those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that young people are fired up and interested in getting involved and are always looking for, how do I make a difference? Because a lot of times they feel like politicians on both sides aren't really talking to them, and they feel left out, and they see a lot of things happening in their lives, like mental health is a great example that comes up all the time. And so when they learn about voter registration and how one of the reasons they're left out is that they're not registered to vote, they are excited about the opportunity to turn that around.
Yeah, and you've been looking at the numbers for a while, right? What are some of the numbers that will, that shock people when you tell them amongst young people, young registration? I mean, I think we were talking a little bit while we were off camera about you got numbers that kind of are surprising, aren't they?
Yeah, we do a lot of research, and I'll just tell you the things that were eye-popping for me and that continue to amaze people. In midterms, 30% typically of 18-year-olds are registered to vote. So people think a lot about turnout numbers and they say, oh, young people aren't turning out, I guess they don't care. But really, this registration is a huge obstacle. And when young people do register in big elections, they turn out at very high rates. So that's the other thing. That by getting young people involved, it's not like, oh, they're just going to not show up in big elections. And I think this midterm is going to be a big election. They show up at very high rates. So that's in presidential years, it's over 75% of registered youth turnout. And in competitive midterms, it's gets close to that.
We talk a lot about get out the vote, right? In my business, in politics, we can get out but actually what you're saying is you got to get out the registration. We're forgetting that it's a two-step process for young people because they may not be registered yet, right?
That's exactly right. So we say voting starts with registration. A lot of young people don't even know you have to register because they haven't been.
We're not doing a lot of civics education these days, are we?
Right. Well, and some states have very early registration deadlines, like could be 30 days in advance of the election. And so, but by the time since they're not in the voter files, they're not getting candidate messages. And so they're really left out. And then they realize there's an election, but the deadline has passed. So that happens very frequently for young people. And so high school, that's really why we're so focused on high school, because that is the last time that everybody is going to be together before they turn 18. And 40% don't go on to college. They have a right to register to vote. And many people don't realize that. People think, oh, you can do this all online, which you can in many cases, but many online voter registration systems require you to have a driver's license, and fewer young people are getting driver's licenses. So that's why in person with their peers and the students themselves leading is so important, because they're the ones, it's their right to vote and it's their social networks to, for them to engage.
So tell me how you're organizing that. I mean, obviously you guys you've been executing this process for a little while now. What does it look like when you guys, train young people or tell candidates, right? Or campaigns or political parties, like and you're nonpartisan, of course, obviously I want to make that very clear. So what are you doing to organize this?
Yeah, we don't work with candidates or parties, but we do work with a lot of nonpartisan and community organizations, and we work directly with students and educators. So
Yeah.
a student or an educator can come to us and get trained in a 1-hour workshop, or if there's an event, we'll send somebody to do a training about why voting is important, how registration fits in, and then how to run a drive in your high school in terms of different, are you going to go to a classroom? Are you going to do an assembly? What kind of permissions do you typically need? And we kind of step the students through the process. They can register their drive with us, and they get a faculty advisor at their school to help them navigate all the ins and outs of getting it set up. We have toolkits for educators to help them, work with the students. And then we have a very cute democracy in a box toolkit that has stickers and t-shirts and posters so that they can publicize the
I
drive.
love merch.
Yeah, I love that. It's very, and then the students, learn about it, run the drive. They can come to us with questions, and then afterwards tell us how they did, and send us photos and stories about how it went. And so that we've got more than 100 drives already signed up this
Wow.
this semester, which is way ahead of any prior year. So I think what we're seeing is a lot of all of the activism that you're seeing on campuses is now turning and also thinking ahead to,
Yeah.
am I gonna vote in November?
Yeah, it's tricky because we are close to the end of the school year in a lot of places. What's the timeline? Let's say
Yeah.
an educator in my district or my area wants to get involved. I mean, how fast can we move? How fast can they move to get organized? Because you mentioned a key part that a lot of these 18-year-olds who will be 18 for the election are seniors who will be leaving town possibly or getting a job. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because we're April.
The timing issue is so important, Fred. I mean, this is the crucial time for high school.
Right. This moment right now, right?
Right, because
By the way, editor's note, host note, Civics Center reached out to me last night. and God bless her, Laura's at 7 a.m. in California did this. That tells you how crucial timing is. They're like, look, we got to go, right? So go on. Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, you guys are ready to go right now, aren't you? That's like zero right now. You're ready.
To go right now.
You're
So
ready to rock.
a student can, so also parents are very critical because parents
Yeah,
can tell
I
their
was gonna say.
student, oh, this
Yep.
would be a great
Yep.
process,
Yep.
for you. So the goal is really for this to become automatic in high school so that it's happening every year, twice a year, right? Once in the fall to take advantage of election energy and back to school energy for the students who will be old enough to vote, and also for the students who can pre-register. In a lot of states, students can pre-register to vote starting at age 16, or it's even 15 in Colorado. So that means there's a huge window for those students if you were looking ahead to 2028. That's why it's critical to get started now also for 2028. But right now the students can go to our website, which is in the little scrolling thing below, and there's an events tab, and you can sign up for a workshop, come to a 1-hour workshop to get the training, and then register your drive, and we'll send you a toolkit. We have our spring season is called Cap, Gown, and Ballot, because the idea is there's a ton of graduation related events happening. You're going to be standing in line for this thing or that thing. You can hold, and graduation is a deadline of sorts for all of these. There's about 4 million high school students who are about to graduate. So there's definitely enough time. And we would love it for students to do it. We also have, for states that have online voter registration, we have a leaderboard, and you can watch your numbers go up as more students are getting registered. Compare your school to other schools, challenge your rivals. To do,
Oh, I love a good rivalry. I live in a part of Missouri that has the oldest high school football rivalry in the country, west of the Mississippi. So
Well, they should
Kirkwood and
definitely do
Webster.
it.
Yeah, I could see Kirkwood and Webster teeing off against each other, and it would be a pretty spirited rivalry. If I know my district.
We would
very
love
well,
to have
so.
them.
Yeah. And so they just reach out to you guys to get that going.
Yep.
That's easy peasy. So I want to talk about some other stuff because you're also doing some other stuff at the Civics Center. And I was diving through your Substack. So let's do this. Let's take a brief pause for our sponsors, and we'll come right back. We're going to talk about the other stuff going on in democracy right now, if that's good for you.
Sounds great.
All right, we'll be right back. I think a lot of you know my life story. I did, of course, tragically lose my wife and child in a car accident in 1994. But one of the things that was key to my recovery and being able to move on with my life and kind of keep going was the financial security of having life insurance at the time. It wasn't a lot, but it was very important to me for me to be able to have that safety after losing so much. And I've seen friends lose loved ones that didn't have life insurance and how hard your lives become. So you owe it to think to your family to think about that and to get life insurance. And I got a great sponsor. Like, Ethos is a great place to find the life insurance you need. Ethos make getting life insurance fast. They make it easy. It's 100% online, and you can get a quote in just seconds. You can apply in minutes, and you can get same day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. And through Ethos, you can get up to $3 million of coverage, and some policies are as low as $30 a month. And Ethos has a 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. So help protect your family with life insurance through Ethos. Get your instant free quote at ethos.com/Fred. That is ethos.com/Fred. Application times and rates may vary. Again, you go to ethos.com/Fred. Thanks. I cannot tell you how crazy my life is these days. I mean, if you follow me, that I've got a lot on my plate right now. My mornings are my quiet time. I catch up on the insanity online. I prep for what is going to be definitely a long day. And that's how I started. But I usually started by downing a lot of coffee and then going on that caffeine ride up and down all day. But I have to be honest, that getting introduced to mud water has really been amazing for me. I got the new low calf coffee to replace my usual cup. And honestly, it's amazing. It's been a smooth transition and a much healthier alternative for me. The coffee version is made with organic Arabica coffee beans. It's L-theanine, the same functional mushrooms you get in their other blends like lion's mane, cordyceps, and reishi. It's rich, it's smooth, and only 45 milligrams of caffeine. So you get the flavor you love without the jitters, crash, or the spiraling thoughts that kind of make your day crazier. So whether you're a long-time drinker of mud water with the original blend or you're easing into something gentler than your usual brew, mud water really makes it ridiculously easy to start the day feeling good. And I'm really enjoying it. I mean, you can even get it now conveniently. So you can get it at Target and Sprouts. They're carrying it really nationwide. So it makes your mornings just easier than ever. So I recommend it. If you're ready to make the switch to cleaner energy, head to mudwater.com and grab your starter kit today. Right now, our listeners get an exclusive deal, up to 43% off starter kits, plus free shipping and a free rechargeable frother when you use code FRED. That's right, up to 43% off with code FRED at mudwtr.com. And after purchase, they'll ask you how you found them. Please show your support and let them know we sent you at Andre Moxie with FP Wellman. Honestly, I love this stuff. I've been drinking it for a week now. And it's really been a game changer. Thanks, Mudwater, for sponsoring our show. And we're back. So, Laura, I was also diving in, and we got a lot of things in our plate. I mean, honestly, we talked a lot already about the midterms coming up. Getting your main mission, of course, is getting young people involved and getting elected. But we're also facing some pretty big obstacles to that. And I was really fascinated by what you were discussing. You guys have laid out a couple analysis of the SAVE Act. And a lot of us talk about the obstacles for women and the challenge of, birth certificates and marriage certificates. But you've identified some real challenges for young people too, haven't you?
Yes, I think young people have been really. I hope all young people will learn about the SAVE Act and how it would affect them if it passes, and get involved in calling their congressional representatives and senators to oppose it. The SAVE Act, for people who haven't followed along, would require for voter registration that you have a very narrow list of documents to prove your citizenship. So typically passport or a birth certificate, and a driver's license would not do. And the reason this impacts young people so much is they every one of them starts out unregistered. So for
Right.
older people, it's like when they move, they have to redo it, name changes. There are all these very serious problems, but for
Right.
18-year-olds, it's, and people coming of age, it's all of them. And so, and it's expensive and time consuming to get these documents if you don't have them available. And I just did, for an experiment, one of the things I wrote about in my Substack is I thought, well, how long does it take? And it caused, for me to try to do it, it was almost $50 and I think 25 days to get it. So that means
Wow.
you just, as a matter of, for a birth certificate, and a passport, I'm sure is, much, much longer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it effectively would block people out of millions of people, young people out of registering, who are eligible, undeniably have a right to vote. And so that's also one of the reasons for this spring and for just right now to tell everybody who's eligible and coming of age that they should just go ahead and do it. Get it done now.
Yeah.
Obviously the SAVE Act looks like it's in trouble. We hope that it won't pass, but
Yeah.
it's a good idea. If you're registered already, then you're not impacted. So we really hope people will do both. Oppose the SAVE Act. We've got a petition on our website, and get registered.
It's such a brilliant angle, because we talk a lot about the money part, the $30, the $50, trying to find a birth certificate. I literally had to do it myself for my driver's license. And well, I was born in New Jersey. I was born in New Jersey a really freaking long time ago, and it wasn't online. And I had to write, and I had to track down which freaking county I was born in, because believe it or not,
Right.
I don't freaking know. I was a baby.
Right.
And then
And
he was,
also
we moved immediately to St. Louis,
Right.
so,
And you're a sophisticated person, and you've dealt with
well, let's
government
not be carried away.
bureaucracies before. And so,
Right.
right.
I've dealt with this. I've dealt with it, but it's true. I mean, I'm an adult, who's dealt with these things. I've written
Imagine if you're
checks.
17 and you
It's
just,
insane.
it's like, who do I write to and what do I need? It's complicated. And
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's also the time factor. I really like that. I like you layering in the time factor, because we literally spent the first half of this show talking about the time factor that we're facing. That the fact that they're graduating from high school the next month or two, and we still have to get them registered, and they'll be gone next year. So there's a whole, and now you have the layer. Wait a minute, I can't register because I don't have my birth certificate. 'Cause Mom lost it during the 5th move. I'm a
I know.
military guy.
Right.
We
Right.
moved.
Right.
I'm a military guy. We moved a dozen times since my oldest daughter was born, and I'm divorced, which as many Americans are, and I don't know which of us got the birth certificates in that divorce. You know what I'm saying? There's that famous folder. I couldn't tell you where that folder is. So guess what? All my adult kids and others are gonna have to look. It is a factor that it's insane at this moment in time, isn't it?
I think it's very important for adults, to understand the challenges of these bureaucratic processes so that they can identify, oh, this actually would be hard, because there's so much blaming of young people as if they're
Yes.
apathetic and they're self-centered, or, these negative stereotypes. It's like, actually, some of this stuff is just tricky. And, I wanted to also say we do a lot of research. And one of the things we've been looking at is, when do young people register to vote? And I mentioned that only 30% typically in midterms are registered. And we've looked month by month, and for a few different states. And in 2025, there was not a single month in any of the states we looked at where the number of 18-year-olds equal the number who were registering equal the number turning 18. So there's this deficit. It gets big right around cutoffs for big elections, just like
Right.
in October, right?
Yeah, it
September,
was frantic.
October. But so if you mess up the timing and you actually needed to have done something in July or August, you're cutting off a huge number of people who've been left out all along the
Which
process.
those of us who know why they're doing this act know why they're doing it, right? And that is the point. The point is to add bureaucrat layers. The point is to make it harder for people, because low turnout's good for some people and not for everybody. It's not democratic. On top of that, we've got a lot of activity in the country right now, a lot of bad things. We had, of course, the activities of ICE in Minnesota that's still going on. They just got quieter. They got smarter. They got rid of Bovino. Young people, I've talked to a lot of young folks who are just fired up. They're seeing, we have college age kids in the household. They saw so many of their international students live in fear and are still living in fear. I mean, and you've been kind of telling young people you can get involved, and coaching them on that too, haven't you?
Yes, I mean, we are focused on students who want to make a difference. And I think one of the things you see with student activism today is look, they're seeing how policy impacts them very directly in their school, with their friends, with their community, and they can get active quickly because they're all in class together all the time. And so there's issues for them to be involved in, and there's also not enough. A lot of young people haven't seen, don't feel like democracy is working for them, and don't really feel confident in their ability to make a difference. And so one of the things we perceive is when they take ownership and run a voter registration drive themselves, it's developing this kind of leadership capacity of like, oh, this can work. I can, make a difference
Yeah.
in my community, and that
Yeah.
can build, and other people will be motivated and inspired. And so helping them see the stories of how democracy works, I think is, really important, so they don't think, oh, well, I can raise a fuss, but it won't matter in the end. It's a process, and it's up to us, and it's up to you.
And I love that. Like I said, I've mentioned a couple times this show, the town hall I attended at University of Missouri this week, and it was their largest turnout ever. And that tells you something. Like they're like, okay, energy's building. People are frustrated, and you looked at the room, and I'll be very honest, it wasn't the kids. If I'd walked down the street here in my hometown, I would expect it to be there, but they're there, and they're concerned. There's a lot of young men, and you think I'll be honest, I expected a room full of young ladies. No, it was a lot of young men, and they feel disenfranchised, and they feel left out. The statistics are there. I think we had the largest number of 18 to 24-year-old men living at home in the history of the United States, 64%, some number I've seen.
Right. What I hope
They
what
was
I
it.
hope students will do, college students, what I hope college students will do is when they have younger brothers and sisters, tell
Yeah,
them to get
empower
registered,
them.
and go
Yeah,
and call your high school. If some
yeah.
some students get
Go
registered
home.
early because they had a great AP government teacher. We think
Yeah,
it shouldn't depend. Yeah, that's great, but it
yeah.
shouldn't depend on that. So the college students can actually be a really great motivating force for calling their favorite social studies teacher and say, hey, go ahead and do that. Make sure everybody's registered this fall.
I love that plan. Well, Laura, I've taken a lot of time early. Thank you so much for joining us. The most important thing I ask you at the end is where can people? We've been running the banners. Where can people find more about your work and find these kits? I want you guys to get empowered. The whole point of this show is on democracy. It's to actually give. I like my show, and I love having guests like you, because the one thing I tell my viewers of the Midas Touchdown is this is an action show. This isn't just watch and do it. You're supposed to have action, and so they can get involved very easily. Tell them where to go. Tell them where to find those kits. Go.
Yes, so thank you so much. First of all, thanks for having me. To get involved, our website is thecivicscenter.org, and we have a tab for students and a tab for educators and a tab for partner organizations. Go and explore the different tabs, and then talk to the teenagers in your life and get them to encourage them to come to a training, encourage teachers to come to a training. We have a full-time manager of educator development who's available for one-on-one consultations. So it's all on the website. The Substack is the Civics Center at substack.com. We're on Instagram and Blue Sky with the same tagline for people to follow along, and we promote things in all of those channels. So thank you.
Perfect. Oh, thank you. This is great. And thanks to your team for reaching out. I was thrilled. I was like, this is great. So it is an action time. I mean, I tell people all the time, democracy. The joke is, democracy is a team sports and actions. It is you. You got to get involved. And this is where we start. Get registered, get moving. If you want to change our country, you got to be a part of it. So thank you so much, Laura. It's great meeting you. Thanks for joining us on the Midas Touch Network. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now. It's a great conversation. I love when these guests show up for me, and hopefully Laura's able to join us in the chat too. Boy, I appreciate you guys so much being here. Look, an unbelievable story came out this week, and it's not my usual fare, but it is, because it involves the Department of Defense, and I want you to watch this story. It's a local news story. It's a little bit different than we usually go into here. It's a little longer, but we're going to talk about this for a minute. But I want you to see, in case you missed this story, I don't want you to miss this story. So here we go.
For an unusual meeting that took place earlier this year. Marianne Ahern is here to explain why the Pentagon met with the Vatican officials in the first place. Marianne?
Marianne, shortly after Pope Leo's January speech to diplomats visiting the Vatican, Pentagon officials requested a meeting with those who represent the Pope in Washington, D.C. The disagreement today? What was the tone and the message? In January, Pope Leo spoke of the importance of international humanitarian law when he addressed the diplomatic corps.
War is back in vogue, and a zeal for war is spreading.
Shortly after that speech, a meeting was requested by the Pentagon with Vatican officials based in Washington, D.C. That's highly unusual. As first reported by the Free Press, the Pentagon offered, quote, a bitter lecture warning that the United States has the military power to do whatever it wants and that the church had better take its side. A Vatican source also tells NBC5 the meeting was most unpleasant and confrontational. Today, photos from the meeting were released by the War Department on social media. And a Pentagon official says, quote, "The Free Press's characterization of the meeting is highly exaggerated and distorted. The meeting between Pentagon and Vatican officials was a respectful and reasonable discussion. We have nothing but the highest regard and welcome continued dialogue with the Holy See." Pope Leo has openly criticized President Trump.
I'm told that President Trump recently stated that he would like to end the war. I hope that he's looking for an off-ramp.
The Chicago-born Pope has also been critical of the Trump administration's handling of the immigration crisis, as well as U.S. actions in Venezuela and Iran.
I would invite the citizens of all the countries involved to contact the authorities, political leaders, congressmen, to ask them, tell them to work for peace and to reject war always.
And one more voice adding to this controversy, Vatican Ambassador Brian Birch, he is also from the Chicago suburbs, appointed by President Trump, posted on social media today that some journalists and online agitators are, quote, choosing to exploit a routine meeting to sow division. Marian?
Marianne, thank you.
I just want you to wrap. Let's start with the facts that DOD and the Vatican agree on. That after the Pope made a speech condemning war and the zeal for war, that the Department of Defense, the United States of America, summoned the ambassador of the Pope to the Pentagon to discuss it with him. I was in the Army for 22 years. I actually served at the Pentagon, or under the Pentagon. My last assignment in the military was 3 years in Washington, D.C., for the Department of the Army headquarters. I don't remember the ever summoning the Pope or his ambassador. So if you believe for 1 second it was a friendly discussion where they just wanted to have just a chit chat like the DOD wants you to believe, I have got a bridge to sell. I got this huge silver arch to sell you. It's on the Mississippi River. The views are spectacular from the top of it. But if you believe for 1 second that that's why DOD summoned the bash of the Pope was to have a friendly conversation, then I've got that arch to sell you. Because the fact is that someone in the Pentagon, which is now led by a white Christian nationalist, Pete Hegseth, who is openly having his militant Protestant preacher who's against women voting, having monthly prayer meetings in the theater of the Pentagon with the auspices of the Secretary of Defense himself, not the head chaplain, the Secretary of Defense himself inviting his staff with an RSVP. If you believe for 1 second that he didn't bring the Pope's ambassador in the DOD to threaten him, you're fools. That is some dark stuff. And the fact is, more and more of these guys are doing these things. The idea that the Pope, who speaks for the largest church in the world, okay, and is American, and was just saying we need peace. The idea that peace is wrong. The idea that we shouldn't have war is wrong. I'm not sure what books they're reading, because the book I was brought up on, and by the way, I was raised Catholic. Certainly, I guess Jesus is woke, because that's what they want you to believe. That's where we are, though. Pete Hegseth's Pentagon thought they should summon the Pope's ambassador to chew his ass about opposing military action by the United States of America. And essentially, according to the reports that came out afterwards, they didn't mention it in this report, but they mentioned the papal legate, which was a time in the history of the papacy where the French king moved them and basically took over the Pope, took over the papacy, took over the Vatican, which is the Vatican today, which was perceived as a threat by the Vatican. A threat so much they believe that it has been announced that Pope Leo has no intention of visiting the United States while Donald Trump is in office, because he does believe that they are being threatened by Pete Hegseth's Department of Defense. So for America's Catholics, that's quite a statement, that the leader of your church will not visit one of his largest congregations of Americans because of threats from the Department of Defense led by a Christian white nationalist zealot. Folks, that's where we are. So back to the top of the show, you should get those kids registered. You should get everyone you know registered to vote. Then you should organize them to vote. You should get them out to vote, because that's where we are. And the only way we stop it is by overwhelming numbers in November. That's the only way we're stopping this, folks. And I know a lot of people where we won't have an election. I get it. Once again, the solution: organize, be vocal, and get out to vote in numbers they cannot deny. Okay? So that's what I'm telling you right now, because we are in a place where the Department of Defense of the United States of America is threatening the Pope. That's a dark place. With that, I'm Fred Wellman. This is Anonymous FP Wellman, here every week. As always, follow us on our fpwellman.substack.com. I had a piece today. Today is the 6-year anniversary that I got in my car and drove to New York City to run, the privilege to run, New York Presbyterian Ryan F. Larkin Field Hospital under the leadership of my friend, Dr. Missy Gibbons, and my dear friend, nurse, Dr. Kay Kemplin, and other great leaders, young men and women who went there. There's a thing Dick Winter says. If you've ever watched Band of Brothers, there's a piece in Band of Brothers at the end where Dick Winters himself, who's the star of the show, is interviewed documentary style as part of the show. And he tells a story of when his grandson asked him, Grandpa, were you a hero in the war? And Dick Winters said something so legendary that I never could live up to. He said, I wasn't a hero, but I served in a company of heroes. And when I look back at Brian Larkin, I was just the admin guy. I organized stuff. I made sure people were fed. I made sure they were paid. I made sure we had supplies. I made sure we were safe. We were secure. But I wasn't the one putting on a bubble suit, going inside a positive pressure bubble to take care of sick people. Those are the heroes. They were kids, even adults, doctors, nurses. We had student nurses who came from all over the United States, led by doctors and nurses, to take care of sick people in the hour of need. We didn't have a test for COVID back then. It was just good people who saw a moment and went there. So I'd love you to read that story at fpwellman.substack.com. Again, I'm not a hero, but I've been very blessed in this long life to serve in the company of heroes and support them and get some of their glory, because to them, the glory goes to those heroes who stepped up. So with that, check that out, fpwellman.substack.com. Thanks for joining us here on the Midas Touch Network. Every Friday night, we'll be back here next Friday night, 7 p.m. as always, Eastern. I appreciate you. We're not done yet. Thanks.